Hello, welcome to QA Tutorials. In this video, we will look at Selenium WebDriver wait commands, how they are useful for waiting for the elements to be present on the web page. So I will show you example how the wait command is useful for waiting the elements for waiting for the elements to appear on the web page, and what are the different types of wait commands. Let's review the different types of wait commands available in Selenium, and then we will look at some examples. Right. So we have like implicit wait. So implicit wait basically tells Selenium to wait for a certain amount of time before throwing an exception that it cannot find the element. Right. So implicit wait is applicable for all the elements on the page. Right. So when you put implicit wait, all the elements, the WebDriver waits for all of the elements for that time frame before it says that element is not found. So this is the syntax of implicit wait. So when you create a WebDriver, we can do driver.manage.timeouts.implicit wait. Then you can specify how much time you want to wait and the time unit. So time unit can be seconds, milliseconds, days, hours, things like that. So I will show you in the code example how this works. So basically here the driver waits for the element to appear for 10 seconds before it throws out the timeout, no such element exception or timeout exception. Right. So this implicit wait applicable for throughout the session of the driver. So sometimes it may delay your scripts when using implicit wait. So another type of wait command is explicit wait. So in explicit wait, we will wait for particular elements, right, on the page which will take time to load. So we'll wait for those elements only and without giving implicit wait, where we'll wait for all the elements on the page, right? So that way the scripts will be a little faster, right? So the explicit waits, we have like a fluent wait command, right? What is fluent wait command? It will define the maximum amount of time we will wait for the element as well as frequency with which to check the condition, right? So the polling interval. We can also specify the wait amount of time it will wait also, and also the frequency, right, at which to check the condition. The frequency is also called as polling interval. So for example, we can say like wait for a particular element for 30 seconds with the polling interval of 5 seconds. So we have a additional parameter of polling interval in fluent wait. Also we can ignore some kind of exceptions like no such element exceptions when searching for element on the page. Right, this is the fluent wait command. So if we look at sample syntax for fluent wait, so we're going to, so this is an example of waiting for 30 seconds for an element to be present on the page and checking it for its presence every 5 seconds. Right, so this is the fluent wait command. We dot with timeout 30 seconds dot polling every 5 seconds, ignoring no such element, and we'll create a function wait dot until, right? That function will wait for the element ID foo for 30 seconds. So if it appears before 30 seconds, it will return the element. If it doesn't appear before that 30 seconds, it will give an exception. So this is called fluent wait. So advantage of fluent wait is we'll only wait for some particular elements on the page for the timeout instead of waiting for all the elements on the page as it is in implicit wait. Also there is something called expected conditions command, which is also another explicit wait command. where we'll wait for some condition to be met, right? So we can say like element to be clickable, or element to be displayed, or element to be enabled, right? So this is the syntax of expected condition. Here we are creating an instance of WebDriver wait, which has a timeout of 10 seconds, and then we are waiting for some element to be clickable or the element to be available. Right? Once the element is clickable, so we can make actions on the element, right? Specific actions. So these are some of the examples of explicit wait commands, and there is a couple of other timeouts like page load timeout, right, where you can the entire page loading, right, you can specify time limit, right? So we can say like page should be loaded within less than 100 seconds or something like that. If timeouts takes page load takes more than 100 seconds, it will give an error, right? But if your timeout gives negative, it will be infinite, right? That is page load timeout. And there is something called script timeout, right? So you can specify how much time this asynchronous script to finish execution before throwing an error. This is called a script timeout. You can also specify this. So these are the various WebDriver wait commands available in Selenium to manage the timeouts and to manage the delays in the loading of the web elements on the page. So let's look at some examples of how implicit wait works and how expected element can be used to wait for particular elements, right? So for this example, we're going to take a URL testproject.io, and so we should have some delay in loading pages. So we're going to look at the login page, right? So login page takes some time to load the elements of username or password section. So there is some dynamic function, so there is some delay in loading the login page, right? So when you directly access this page, right, the elements may not be visible and Selenium will not find. Let's just try this accessing the elements directly first, then we will use the methods for implicit wait and explicit wait and see how the page works, right? So let's start with let's go to Eclipse, right? So we'll create a new class for our waits. Java class say wait test case, right? So we'll make it as a main class. So this is our main method. So we're going to initialize our WebDriver. So I have other scenarios where I'm using WebDrivers. I'm going to copy this WebDriver. Right, so we are initiating a Chrome WebDriver here. Then we're going to go to the URL that we are testing. Get and our string, right, URL. So we're going to use directly this login page URL. So this login page URL you can find using the inspect element. So this is the URL app.test.project.io. We're going to copy this element. So we just need the URL. So this is the URL where the login page works. Let's put it in the quotes. So we are opening that URL and in the URL we want to see the so let's say username, right? Email. So let's inspect this element. This is the ID equal to username or name equal to username. You can use any of these. We'll assume like name equal to username. We'll try to click on the username element, right? So for that, we want to driver dot find element. We'll do the name attribute, right? By dot name. This is username. And we want to just click on it. Then we want to hit the browser to close the session, right? So basically we are opening the URL, we are clicking on the username element and closing the browser. Because there is loading time for the login page, so this element, the click will not wait for the load. So let us see how this works. So run it. Run as Java application. So because there is a loading time, so the element will not be found. Let us see what is the result. So it's opening the login page. So even though it's here, so you can see it's unable to locate the element. Name, username, right? Because the script exited before the element got loaded on the page, right? So that's why we got unable to locate the element, no such element. Now we're going to use the commands for implicit wait first. Right, we're going to use the implicit wait commands, wait for 10 seconds. So for that, I'm going to initialize the driver dot manage dot timeouts. So we are looking for implicit wait. So long, we want to say 10 and this is a time unit, not seconds. So we are adding a implicit wait now. Now the element should be clickable properly, right? So now in the new versions we have duration also. Instead of doing time units, there is another way to do this as timeouts.duration. So let us test this and see if this works. So we should not see no such element exception this time because we are waiting for 10 seconds for element to appear. See, now there is no error, right? We found the element properly, right? So this is how the implicit wait works, right? But the implicit wait is applicable for all the elements on the page. Right, so we want to do only for particular element. We can use the explicit wait. So we can we'll see the example of expected condition to see how to wait for a particular element on the page. Right. So also for implicit wait for Selenium 4, from Selenium 4 onwards, so we have the another way to do this implicit wait duration, right? This is the latest wait parameter duration. So we can use the duration command also to specify the timing, right? Duration of seconds, say 10 seconds. So this also so instead of using the implicit wait is deprecated, so that's why it's giving a warning, right? It's deprecated. Instead of implicit wait time unit, we can use the duration parameter unit for specifying the timing, right? Let's try this out before we go to the explicit wait scenario. So if you are using Selenium 4 and above, use the duration unit to specify the time instead of the time unit to specify the time. Right, so this is also good, right? Now we're going to comment this and see we are getting the exception. Then we're going to use the explicit wait to wait for the only for that particular element on the page. See, now we got the exception, right? No such element. So we're going to use the explicit wait now to see how we can use that. So for explicit wait, we're going to create an instance of WebDriver wait. What is the syntax for this? Explicit wait. So WebDriver wait, we're going to create an instance of the WebDriver wait. Right, so then here we need to import this WebDriver wait. Right. So we added. So we imported WebDriver wait. Then we go to the expected condition. So this is the syntax. Web element. So our ID is basically we are looking by name. I think we need to import the expected conditions. Let's see here. We want to import web element, okay, and also the expected conditions, right? Then we're going to do this element to be clickable. Then we can say element, this is this, then we can say element dot click. So we're not going to use the direct access, right? So now basically we are waiting for 10 seconds for to click on the username element. Then we are clicking on the element, right? This time we should not get any exception because we are waiting for the element to be present. Let's run it. Okay, now the page is loading. Right, see now there is no exception, right? So this is the use of explicit wait command, right? right? So this is more efficient. If you know like some particular element you need to wait, you can use the explicit wait command to wait for that particular element before clicking on it. So this is how you use the Selenium WebDriver wait commands to make your script wait for the elements on the page properly and make sure your test runs correctly on the page. So you have seen like implicit wait commands, explicit wait commands, page load timeout, and script timeout commands. So try these commands with your scripts and let me know if you face any problems. If you like this video, click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.